Welcome to Making Sense of the Madness. We got a great show lined up for you today. We got Vem Miller. He is the founder of the American Happens Network, and he also is the host of the Blood Money podcast. We're going to be talking about a plethora of issues from Kamala Harris to where we are as a country and a society. You're not going to want to miss it. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. And we are back. We are joined by Vem Miller. Vem, thank you so much for being with us. Before we get into Kamala Harris, the DNC, all the good stuff, let people know about yourself, how you got into this arena, because you've been doing this now almost 20 years. You're an OG, if you will. And I always tell people you can't rely on others. You know, at the end of the day, you know, you don't have to have a podcast or make films or be a politician or all these things, but you do have to tap into something and be your own hero and take charge. And you've kind of done that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jason. Well, I'm a huge fan of your work. Frankly, this whole thing with America Happens started in the early 2000s, right around the time that you made Loose Change. And that had such a huge influence on me. And I'm so excited to be on your show because I remember when Loose Change first came out and seeing all the inconsistencies with 9/11 definitely had a huge effect on me. I actually started the America Happens Network first in 2003. It came to me because I was working in the mainstream media. I was actually producing and directing pretty big music videos at the time, including videos for DMX, Master P, John Mayer. And so I had a lot of videos on rotation, but at the same time, while that was going on, I started directing a lot of hip hop videos and started going to certain neighborhoods that, frankly, as a white guy, I wouldn't see those neighborhoods had I not been directing really gangster rap videos in those neighborhoods. And a lot of things came to light in terms of what are governments doing? And now imagine I'm watching your documentary, Loose Change. At the same time, I'm hanging out with a bunch of black folks talking about all the horrible things the government has done in those neighborhoods. And I really had an awakening around there, right? But I was fooled. I thought George W. Bush was the problem. That's what I believed back then. I believed that he was, firstly, it was a stolen election in 2000, if you ask me. George W. Bush came in there with an agenda, Project for a New American Century, and I identified that as a problem. And Barack Obama, when he came with all his hope and, talk about peace and all that stuff, and, that really had an impression on me. I was fooled. I was, I fell for the lies. I actually cried when Barack Obama became president, and I voted for him in 2008, right? And then it took me a little while to realize that this was essentially a false prophet, so to speak, that all the stuff that he said in his campaign that indicated that he would be bringing significant change, really the change I wanted and the change I thought he was talking about was a military-industrial complex, right? But that turned out to be not true. He turned out to be another puppet of the military-industrial complex. And so, around 2000, so in 2007, America Happens goes viral on MySpace because of content we're producing, right? 2008, Barack Obama comes along. I think, okay, there's a savior here. We're going to stop doing America Happens. Well, I saw what was happening in 2015, 2016 in terms of really frankenbiting the words of Donald Trump. And what I mean by that is frankenbiting is a reality TV show trick. I know because I've produced a lot of reality TV shows where you basically create a fictitious version of reality through tricks and editing. And I started to identify that this was going on around 2015, and frankly wasn't a Donald Trump fan. What made me a Donald Trump fan is the fact that they were trying so hard to make Donald Trump look bad through tricks like frankenbiting, editing tricks that we would see in reality shows. At the same time, somebody I work with named Jeff Zucker, who was a really bad reality show producer, frankly, became the head of CNN News. And I started saying to myself that this is weird. You don't hire a reality show producer whose job is to create fake conflict in order to sell entertainment, right? To then
let's stop there because you've said so much, and I want to hone in that. I don't want to just gloss over that fact. All right, so let's start. first of all, when I went to college, that's what I wanted to do, was make music videos. That's where I wanted to be. I was into
Mhm.
graphic design. I wanted to do covers to albums, all those things. I never thought I was going to get into the political arena. It was only after 2001.
Yeah.
As far as Barack Obama goes, by that time I wasn't fooled, right? But believe me, I thought Bush was the problem as well, but not really Bush, the people behind him, the Cheneys, the Wolfowitzes,
Mhm.
the Rumsfelds, the Rice. You could name, those were very competent. Karl Rove, still around today, right? Very
Yeah.
competent vipers. Even Kissinger in the peripheral, especially when you're talking about Project for a New American Century. William Crystal would be another one that's
Mhm.
still around
Mhm.
these days. So, at that time, especially after Loose Change gained some momentum, it was Code Pink and others that had gravitated towards us and that we were marching with, et cetera, et cetera. But what really alarmed me about Barack Obama was, I was watching, and I often reference the 2008 election, because on the debate stage, you actually had a dozen or so people, two of which were really
Mhm.
genuine, in my opinion. That would be Dennis Kucinich, again, still around, one of the few people I still have respect for in the left.
Exactly. Yep.
Uh,
Mhm.
and Mike Gravel, who is no longer with us. Now, they got limited time up there, but at the same time, I specifically remember, I encourage everybody to go check it out. The very first YouTube debate was hosted by Anderson Cooper, CNN.
Mhm.
Joe Biden's up there, Barack's up there, Hillary's up there, John Edwards, the Democrat all-stars at the time. And, throughout the whole thing, the public's aware enough that they want Guantanamo Bay closed, okay? Every one of
Mhm.
them sits up there and promises that they're going to do it, right? But then I'm looking at how they erect Barack Obama. And look, I remember the birth certificate stuff was out there, the Kenya stuff. That's not the stuff that concerned me. Stuff that concerned me is he's coming out of Chicago. He's connected to people like Rahm Emanuel. He's
Mhm.
speaking at the 2004 DNC as the keynote speaker. He hasn't even won an election yet. He's already
Mhm.
getting all this press, and he's a state senator. That never happens. Then you dig a little deeper, and basically, not only did his parents meet at the Kissinger Institute, but his mother is clearly a honeypot, as she did nude photography, everybody.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then you find out that he went his entire life through high school as Barry Soetoro. Now, you're in the entertainment business. The only time you change your name is if you want to become something else. So he went back to Barack Obama in his college years and clearly was groomed for all this. So the hope and
Mhm.
change, I mean, Brzezinski was part of that campaign. I had become aware of him because of the Project New American Century, et cetera. So then fast forward to this entertainment issue, because I know who Jeff Zucker is,
Mhm.
with CNN. You'd already kind of seen a shift, because I would agree with you, in 2000, more than likely they stole that election. In
Mhm.
retrospect, there have been some people out there that have said what that issue really was the hanging chads to bring in the machines. And there's no
Mhm.
doubt in my mind, in 2004, Kerry, wasn't a fan of Kerry either. Skull and
Yeah.
Bones brothers, Yale alumni, distant cousins on both sides. I
Mhm.
believe Kerry won that election and
Mhm.
absolutely stepped down. He wasn't crushing it in the primaries. It was Howard Dean.
Yeah.
And then the media shifted again. Yeah. And all of a sudden he couldn't win.
Yeah.
So you saw these shifting media narratives. And the first time that I really gravitated to modern day politics, I was in college pre 9/11, and it was the Lewinsky sex scandal, right? And that's really
Mhm.
when it was no longer CNN, but you now had Fox News, you had MSNBC, you had a 24-hour cycle, and they had to fill that more and more and more. And they didn't want to go the old school route. I remember when Donahue just died this week. I remember when they
Yeah.
tried to bring Phil Donahue back. They didn't want that. They wanted
Yeah.
a narrative. And by post 9/11, forget about it. That narrative had shifted. And so,
Mhm.
you just talked about Jeff Zucker taking over. We've seen it go even more hog wild in the last decade plus, especially when you look at the show trials we had via January 6th, where they
Mhm.
literally brought in another Hollywood producer to try to
Yeah.
make that television friendly and fail. So I just kind of wanted to stop you right there. Please continue. But you saw basically the infomercialization of this while spending time with people that had clearly, not only been disrupted by the system, but I identified a lot of the corruption.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I gotta admit, my awakening, although I had this early awakening around 9/11, in terms of realizing both parties and the propaganda, that happened more around 2015, 2016, because I truly believe that the Republicans were the bad guys, you know? Now, obviously, years later, my opinion is that we're looking at wings of the same bird. Really, the fact that somebody like Kerry was pushed up in 2004 against somebody that's more independent minded, like Howard Dean, is indication that this is what they want. They want their puppets, they want their skull and bones, they want the people that have been groomed. And today, it's without a shadow of a doubt that Barack Obama was one of those groomed individuals. It seems as though that's the system. And then you look at these witch hunts against Donald Trump. It's as simple as he's not part of that secret group. That's what he's not part of that. So he's a great threat to them. And so that's really what's helped us to sculpt what America Happens is, where currently we do 14 different shows and documentary series where really exposing the stuff that the mainstream media refuses to expose. We talk about the things that they certainly do not want you to talk about. You know, most recently, we're doing a documentary on the Bundy Ranch, right? Because people don't know that that story hasn't concluded yet, right? In 2014, the federal government went after this man's land. Now this man is suing the federal government because the federal government doesn't even own those lands. It's all fraud. And it's part of the same group, the same cabal, where you look at Harry Reid, who is the man that was running Nevada, and in fact has been the mind behind a lot of these things that are happening with the Republican Party. People that really know Harry Reid say, like, he's the smart one. He's the one that was calling uh, white people domestic terrorists back in 2014. He set the verbiage for where we are right now. He's no longer around. He died a few years back, but he was the brain trust behind what is currently happening in our government, much more so than the Bidens, the Obamas, the Kamalas. This man was the one that was setting the policy. And so as we're making this documentary, we're realizing that all these things that are happening currently, the censorship, calling our fellow citizens domestic terrorists, picking on 80 million Americans, really started with Harry Reid and his fraud. And what was he doing in the fraud? He was stealing land that belongs to we the people and selling it to, well, essentially he was making them Indian reservation grounds, which then means that because they're sovereign, they could sell all the gold on that land, all the minerals to places like Canada and China. And guess who is pocketing the funds? His son, who is the legal representative for the Native Americans. As you dive into these stories, you realize how really things work, which is that these quote unquote elected officials are really all puppets. They are there for their own good. They are robbing we the people. And really, our agenda at America Happens is to expose what's going on so we could reclaim our rights. We could reclaim our constitutional rights and really what belongs to the people.
Well, let me just say this. They're the real gangsters, right? And they're far
Mhm.
from the Don or the boss. That's why I always refer to Cuomo as Andrew Capo Cuomo. He's their middlemen. They're the
Yeah.
ones driving it through. Don't get me wrong. They get some of the perks, some of the power, but at the end of the day, there's always another agenda at the top. You know, you honed in on something with Trump because I think Trump's an imperfect being, but certainly
Mhm.
not part of the club that's looking at what I would call modern day globalization and that movement post World War II, not only towards a one world government, but one of authoritarianism, right?
Mhm.
I think very much he has hobnobbed with these people. I think his first administration was littered, I mean, littered with minions of that agenda from Pompeo to Bill Barr
Mhm.
to Mattis to Bolton. I could keep going through. Can't make that mistake again. However, the proof is in the pudding. The guy just almost took a bullet in the head.
Yeah.
I don't think that was staged. It really bothers me that a lot of people think that was staged when somebody's dead. He clearly got nicked in that ear, and there's just so much evidence that we're not being told the truth about it. We just had video, for
Yeah.
instance,
Could
of
I
the
could I say
individual.
something
Go
on
ahead.
that thing? If it was really staged and that man had the balls, right, to really have like a little bit of a turn, save his life. If he was that courageous, then you know what? More props to him. Honestly, if it was staged, I give him more credit because that is the balls the size of this room, really.
It's listen. Here's the deal. I've been doing this a very long time, and so many people have tried to get me to gravitate not only to the clearly crazy, but the provably
Mhm.
false on a
Yeah.
number of issues. And look, the bottom line is on certain issues, certain people have fallen for that. I mean, look what happened to Alex Jones via Sandy Hook. And,
Mhm.
I'm not going to, tear him apart. I love Alex. But I remember at that time, I warned them. I had done real research into the thing, and there was no doubt in my mind they'd killed those kids. There were real questions there. In fact, there are
Mhm.
still a lot of real questions there, and I've gone over those real questions. A lot of people don't know, for instance, that the teachers that were killed there, for some reason, their cars were targeted in the parking lot as well. They were shot up, other cars were not. People
Mhm.
don't know that the doors were left open and there are two black cloaks on the ground. The initial reports were that the people came in and did this were dressed as clergy members. We have
Mm.
radio, by the way, of the police chasing people supposedly dressed up like nuns in a purple van headed towards Danbury, Connecticut. No one ever talks about that. The first
Wow.
people on the scene, even before many of the police that got there, were nuns. There was a church, a Clive Carver. He's like $1 million televangelist preacher in that Connecticut area. They got a phone call, so they went there to help immediately. Now, I'm not saying that they were involved, but certainly would confuse the situation. Obviously, the video of the people running into the woods, the reports
Mhm.
of an arrest of a former law enforcement member. I mean, there were just so many questions that never got cleared up. And you talk
Yeah.
about Lanz's mother. They want to
Mhm.
focus on crisis actors. They want to focus on, 9/11, they want to focus on hologram planes, right? All these
Mhm.
things that muddy the issue. And, for me, with that staging of Trump, I've watched all the available videos. No doubt that
Mhm.
guy got shot. No doubt that hydraulic thing got shot. Again,
Mhm.
I've watched a lot of pro wrestling, grew up on it. Trump was a part of pro wrestling. I've seen the Razor game, the
Yeah,
no
yeah.
Razor game, none of that. It's just insane to me. And here's the deal: he's imperfect, but he lowered our taxes. He moved us away from globalism. He moved us into energy independence. There was at least no escalation of wars. And I think if he had the right people in the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, and in the National Security Agency, we could actually pull back. A lot of people forget that just before that Syria incident in Duma that never really happened, the gassing of his own people, Trump called
Mhm.
twice to get out of Syria, twice. Now,
Yeah.
here's the problem with Trump. We now know 100% through WikiLeaks documents, hearings, etc., that didn't happen. He still talks
Mhm.
about it like it does. He still talks
Yeah.
about it like Operation Warp Speed. All that is the best thing since breakfast. The hate and lie shots are good, etc. We got to get beyond that. We do got to take a break. I want to get your take on that and the complication that is Donald Trump. Then we're going to talk about his presumed opponent that will be anointed by the DNC this week. It is making sense of the madness, and we'll be back after this.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
I don't know about you, but I have to have that cup of coffee in the morning. And Kingdom Cup is mold free, it is pesticide free, and it is organic. It's got this flavor that is delicious. You don't even have to put cream or sweetener in it.
Why did we go with the bean form, the whole bean? Because ultimately the powder form is the one that gathers the most moisture. And that means the more potential mold development. This is actually organic, mold-free, certified. That's important because ultimately people drink coffee. It's cultural. And so we tried to meet the culture where it is and create a healthy alternative.
Make the healthy choice for you and your family. Try mold-free, pesticide-free, and it's organic. Delicious Kingdom Cup coffee. And it's available now at the Patriot TV store. Go to patriot.tv and click on store. You'll find Kingdom Cup coffee in the health and wellness section. Order Kingdom Cup coffee at the Patriot TV store now.
We are joined by Ben Miller. So I just made a few comments about Trump. Again, I think we're all imperfect. And I think in the long run, obviously the guy did more good than bad. They stole the election from him in 2020. They banned the president from social media. I think they're still putting him in prison, by the way. That ain't over, everybody. He's getting sentenced in September. I've called that from the beginning. I didn't think they were going to shoot him in the head in between.
Yeah.
I think they might try to shoot him in the head again. But again, he's got his problems. So what's your take on Trump? And then we'll kind of move to the other side of the coin.
I mean, Trump, you know, the media really tries to fault him because of his things like his temperament. And when you know certain things about history and presidents, it's really hard for me to even fault Trump on really being a regular guy. That's what he is. He's not a groomed, manicured politician. He's not always on his best behavior, but there's a thick air of fakeness when it comes to those kind of individuals. Yes, Barack Obama is much more presentable. Yes, Michelle Obama is much more presentable in terms of their behavior. But when they're, 99.9% full of crap, I tend to gravitate towards a real kind of person, the kind of person that shows his or her blemishes, that's not trying to fake what they are. And really, I think that's a charm of Trump, right? Most, the mainstream media tries to say, oh, he's like, his words are heavy and he hurts people, he insults people. I don't think the American people care because the American people are hurt and insulted.
Let's stop for a second.
Yeah.
We love it. We love it.
That's it's us. We're pissed off. Yeah, sorry.
No, you're right. Listen, that's it's the inversion of reality in the post-truth world. It's the narrative push. The bottom line is one of the things we like about Trump is he's quick on his feet, right? Look, I was never back in the day a huge, Trump fan, but there was no, I'm 45 years old. There was no escaping his presence within the media, even back in the day when there was, less than a dozen channels. You had like 10 channels. He was on all those. He was on Oprah all the time. The news was covering him. I was a huge Howard Stern fan. You actually looked forward to those because you got the insight into this rich guy that just didn't care and said whatever. I remember how funny the Rosie O'Donnell, Donald Trump back and forth was on the show. People found that entertaining, right? This is long before his political career, everybody. And like you said, first of all, here's the deal. Me and my brother have conversations about this all the time. People act like there's supposed to be a civility within our political system of Congress and the Senate and when you speak there, right? But when I've got a Secret Service agent up there lying about an assassination attempt, I'm dropping F-bombs. And the reality is our founding fathers weren't so civil because if you effed around, you found out, oh, really? Let's go out and do it. I'm going to get my satisfaction. A lot of people forget that those political conversations in the 1800s and 1700s led to we're going to shoot at each other. That's about as civil as it was. So look, and again, if there was a real insurrection, you imagine telling those people that what happened on January 6th was an insurrection without any muskets, and they would have laughed in your face.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So continue.
One thing that struck me as we're talking about this is really, I think this is part of the war against men and the war against alpha men, the war against the men that are willing to stand up against the tyrants. And if you look at what these globalist powers have done, right? Firstly, they've targeted Donald Trump. What is Donald Trump? Donald Trump is an alpha male that speaks his mind. He's the real threat to these globalists because if we men decide to return to our alpha energy and really stand up to this nonsense, because yes, the world's been overtaken by beta scared men that get emotional over tweets, right? While there's all kinds of horrors happening in the world, they are not well-studied individuals because if they were well-studied, they would focus on the true evil that is happening around the world, but they can't even take tweets from somebody like Donald Trump. To me, this is about putting a weak individual like a Biden in power, and I know he's on his way out, but just visually, when you look at these two men, one's a powerful alpha male, the other guy's a weak puppet. It's very clear. And to me, this is really about the overall war against men. Something, by the way, that we see all the time in our documentary work. We've made a lot of documentaries about the family law industry, for example, right? Family law industry all across America and the world, which specifically targets men and fathers, right? You have this epidemic of single motherhood. Well, guess what? That's our courts doing that, right? I'd like to mention one documentary we're currently working on having to do with this lawyer in Nevada named Marshall Willick. That's one of the most corrupt individuals out there. He's got a literal sex predator working for him. There are rumors that he is a sexual predator, which you could, by the way, find out on our network. We did a piece called Godfather of Family Law. But these kind of individuals remain in power that are directly a threat to our families, our fathers and mothers, right? And you see this across the entire Western world. So to me, this is really about the war against men. They want to make an example of Donald Trump. They don't like these alpha characters that speak their own mind. They'd rather have puppets, manicured puppets like your Barack Obamas and your Kamala Harris's.
No, absolutely. And, I watched Barack Obama's speech at the DNC. He's very good at it. He's done this for a very, very long time. I would say he's at the peak of his game, at least in speaking right now. And a lot of people have said that he's the surrogate president, et cetera. If that is the case, and people like General Flynn and others have said so, he's still middle management, right? He's the one that's giving George Clooney, the call to, get out there and get some press and get the movement going to get Joe Biden out there. I want to hit on something you said about men and the family court system, because I couldn't agree more. As a kid, certainly a part of that. My father was no saint, but seeing a lot of good dads get raw deals, right? Let me bring it even further. We often talk about the abortion issue. I'm no Bible thumper, no conservative. I'm politically homeless forever. I'm a constitutionalist at best. In my own personal life, probably don't want an abortion, right? Probably going to want that, have the kid no matter who it's with and what the circumstance is. At the same time, it was not my battle at 3 months. Okay, whatever. I always thought it was at least a states' rights issue. Once you start pushing to 6 months, I was born at 7. And then we start getting into 9 months, and then we start talking about making the baby comfortable. Okay, now it's an issue. But let's take it back even further. One of the huge problems I have with the whole abortion issue is the guy has no say. It's like he doesn't exist in the equation whatsoever. He can be out there, say, hey, she's pregnant. I'm willing to take full custody of that child immediately after birth. Sign me up. I still don't get to say whether that kid lives at all. And like, for some people look at me cockeyed, like I'd even want that decision. That's insane to me. That to me shows how far morally we've shifted as a society. Forget about the law, that the person that is half responsible for what will become a child, most likely, 99.9% of the time, guys, no say whatsoever.
It's the biggest tragedy. I mean, they've literally made the men into a sperm donor, right? And this is a war against men. Like, when you have no say over a child, you're constantly told that by the courts, by women, by third wave feminism, that you are literally nothing if you have no domain over your own child, which is basically what the family courts have said to 90% of men who don't have custody of their children. That tells you where our country is going. Now, let's parallel that with what is happening on the streets, right? So we were told that this third wave feminism is all about equality and making sure that women are basically getting the same that is due to them that men are getting, right? But how has that manifested itself, right? We're seeing violence against women, we're seeing violence against children, we're seeing horrors and crimes like we've never seen before, right? Why is that occurring if this was a good choice for society? The truth is, it's not a good choice. The truth is, this is really a matter of brainwashing women to have their children raised by third parties because it's liberating to go and work. Really, it's all about making sure that there's another paycheck coming, more money going through the system, damn be the families. And that's currently what's happening right now. Where in history have we seen these kids thinking that they're goldfish or cats? I mean, that just sounds like mental illness.
Let me stop you right there. I got to stop you. Not only is there a super mental illness in this, but like you said, they've devastated the nuclear family, which I would argue is the strongest unit that humanity has ever known. Why? Look, you can have real problems with your friends and other people and sometimes cut them out of your life. And don't get me wrong, families have that in some essences too. You're more likely to forgive your brother, mother, sister than anyone else. That bond is, you will do things for your family you will do for no one else, and they want to break that up. And then as far as this, disillusionment and this projection of fantasy with our young people, well, step one is have your young people again raised by the state or some other entity, and step two is separating them from a biological reality. It used to be that when you were a kid and fads came along, like you wanted to be an astronaut or you wanted to wear the jam pants, or everybody knew that would go on. And they also knew if you said something that wasn't true, they wouldn't buy into Fantasyland. Now they encourage Fantasyland, and they literally don't tell the parents if they can drug them up, permanently alter their biology, and hopefully get them into that surgery room. That's how dark this has gotten. We got to take a break. When we come back, we do have to hit Kamala Harris, because when we talk about identity politics, I mean, this is the height of it. And she's not really somebody that has a political agenda. Her political agenda is to serve those with the agenda. Back with more Making Sense of the Madness after this.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today to lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store, a secure, hassle-free shopping experience.
Don't let them win. Patriot TV is committed to delivering the truth. America's new network for Patriots is growing fast, and we'd love you to join us as a member of Patriot TV. Your support makes it possible for us to continue to deliver unbiased reporting, thought-provoking discussions, and insights you won't find anywhere else. From in-depth interviews to behind-the-scenes footage, Patriot TV brings you closer to the voices shaping our nation's future. Whether it's political developments, cultural shifts, or global affairs, Patriot TV keeps you informed and empowered. As a member of Patriot TV, you'll get perks like personal invitations to exclusive Patriot TV events, where you can gather and network with like-minded Americans. We'll also host online events throughout the year with General Flynn, who's committed to host live Q&A webinars where callers like you can ask him questions and get real answers. Access to these events will be members only, so go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. We have a great membership option starting at just $9.99 a month, or save with our annual membership for only $99, or take advantage of the best value, the 2-year membership for just $159. Go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member. It's fast and easy. Do your part to make sure the truth gets out to all Patriots and help ensure future programming. Become a member today. Just go to patriot.tv, click on Become a Member, join today.
We are back. We are with Vem Miller. The America Happens Network is where you can find him. The Blood Money Podcast is his show. We've never seen a more outwardly puppeted administration than the Biden administration, right? I mean, I've lived through some, but this guy clearly had dementia in 2020. He could barely speak. He ran nothing. We mentioned John Kerry. I mean, that's how it works. John Kerry drops out in 2004. He ran way more of the foreign policy and the diplomacy in this cycle than you could ever imagine. He was a real guy. Kamala Harris, in fact, he's one of the only real guys. You know, I would say Tony Blinken, he knows what he's doing. There's a couple of them in there that are actually moving and shaking. A lot of them are just kind of there. Kamala Harris is one of those people. I mean, you look at how unpopular she was in 2020, one of the first to drop out, couldn't get 3%. Literally, this cycle, they set it up so she didn't have to get a vote or debate a person in this thing. And they've just pushed her out there. So, you know, obviously this is, I don't know if this could be more puppeted than the Biden administration. It certainly puts a new face on it. So, so what are your thoughts on this? Because a lot of people think there's no way they can get this woman in. And I'm like, they didn't fix anything from 2020. I don't know why you don't think they can get this woman in. So go ahead.
There's a few things I want to bring together here that we've been talking about, right? So we're talking about, and I'll answer the Kamala Harris question in a second as I plant a few things, right? So we were talking about family law, okay? In essence, every marriage with the government, and it is a marriage with government when you get your license for marriage, is bigamy by definition, okay? Because the third party in your marriage, it's literally 33%, 33%, 33%. Husband, wife, government. So by definition, every marriage where you go through the government, which then basically holds the tiebreaker as to whether you get to be a father to your children, whether you get to be one of those men that are pushed out of their child's life to then, have single motherhood, which, frankly, the prisons, I think something like 90% of the prison population is a product of single motherhood, which tells you a lot about where that leads. And there's actually studies that show that fathers, most of the time, are better to raise children than the mothers. These are real studies, right? But nonetheless, we've been pushed in this direction in the terms, for progressivism, right? Then you go into something like Joe Biden being a father versus Donald Trump. Just on the surface alone, Donald Trump has been a much better father to his children by virtue of the fact that his children aren't a bunch of drug addicts and degenerates, right? So you see this happening. Now let's talk about Kamala Harris, right? So what people don't know about Kamala Harris, two big facts as to why she has been groomed by globalists, because she is the she's a perfect psyop victim to run the country they want her to, the way they want her to run. Firstly, she studied at Montreal University. She is very much a product of the socialist Canadian system, and the Canadians absolutely love her. And when you hear her talk about these socialist ideas, government funding everything, taking our guns away, one has to question, where did she get that information from? Well, her most important years, when she is essentially being groomed, when she is being filled with knowledge, came in a Canadian university, came under socialist principles. But then let's take it a step further. People don't know, but Kamala Harris's dad was alienated from her life when she was 7 years old. Now, Kamala Harris's dad, regardless of what you think about Kamala Harris, her dad, had a PhD, wasn't a domestic abuser, doesn't seem like a bad guy. Yes, he loves communism, but that's not reason enough to have a father removed from a child's life, right? So 7 years old, when Kamala was 7 years old, her father was removed from her life. And then you see her living her life and doing a lot of the same mistakes that you see products of single mothers. And I know this is a very unpopular topic, but it's true, because the products of single mothers, in terms of how they conduct themselves, their success, their failure, whether they end up in jail, like I said, 90% of the prison population is product of single motherhood. That shows you that there's something flawed, that a nuclear family is the way to do it. But the California courts, when Kamala was only 7 years old, removed her father from her life, right? Now she grows up and she becomes a prosecutor, and she's allowing a bunch of black men who are proven either to have done their time or proven to be innocent rot in jail for political gain. Are you seeing the pieces I'm putting here as to why she is a perfect puppet for this agenda? War against men, war against country, war against our Constitution. She is the perfect individual because she has been groomed. She has all the psychological issues of somebody that's gone down that path and has the traumas in her life that will then dictate her to be essentially a tyrannical president if she does come to power. And yes, I'm very scared that through fraud and all kinds of other means, they are going to install her.
I think that is now the plan. At the same time, when we look at traditional politics, usually politicians have to talk to the press. They have to take live questions. That mold was kind of broken with the Biden 2020 run. Everybody talks about Biden in the basement, but really it's being echoed with Kamala Harris. She's not doing press conferences. She's not taking questions. Last time I saw her on something other than the DNC, it was on RuPaul's Drag Race or a horribly staged bit in a convenience store that shows you that these people aren't human and can't navigate real life. I don't know if you saw this yet. Have you seen the Doritos handoff?
I haven't seen that particular one, but I've seen a lot of moments where Kamala is just so disconnected with the regular person's reality that she just acts clueless. So I've seen that type of moment, but not that particular moment.
Well, let me just say this. This is how insane, and I encourage you to watch it because it's insane. First of all, when I watch Donald Trump interact with people, and this is again one of the appeals, I moved to Iowa from New York during the COVID 1984 nightmare. Obviously, the political cycle here, Trump came many times. He was over at the treehouse the day after I was eating in there, slinging pizzas to people, signing things, shaking hands, doing what a politician usually does, right? He can navigate that. Secret Service, it looks a little bit worried because it's kind of chaotic, but again, he's doing his thing. This video with Kamala Harris, her husband, and Tim Walz, they've got everybody put to the side. They got a film crew. They got a crane in there for audio, like a boom. I mean, hey guys, it's 2024. You could have filmed it with a damn cell phone and it would have looked the goddamn same, but whatever. So the first take is her husband with a bag of Doritos, casually giving it to her. First of all, these people aren't buying or eating Doritos. They're not checking out at the counter. That's not a real thing. They're not interacting with any other human beings whatsoever. So they don't use that take because it doesn't involve Tim Walz. Now, here's the real gaslight and the insanity for me. They've got the median thing. So Walz is on one side and Kamala and the husband are on the other. And Kamala asks for some corn nuts. Walz got them right here, hands her Doritos. She grabs them. She goes, just what I wanted. And even her husband in the background is confused. He's like, what about the corn nuts? You ask for something, you get another thing. It's a perfect metaphor for how we're gaslit on a regular basis. And you can ask for something and we'll tell you got it, give you another thing and expect you to act for joy. So I encourage you to watch this thing because it's over the top. But if they do get this woman in, is that the end? I mean, we're already kind of on our last legs as a quote unquote constitutional republic. Is that the final, jugular cut?
I mean, you're talking about our first Canadian president. I was about to say prime minister because that's what they do in Canada. So yes, we are royally screwed if she comes into power. I mean, I don't think we could actually retrieve this country at this point. Pretty much the world's gone. The globalists have said so much that if Trump does come into power, it's basically end of their globalist game. So that is a huge threat. One of the things I want to bring up, right, is Kamala goes around saying she listened to hip hop videos hip hop music back in the 80s when she was smoking all this pot and inhaling and all that stuff, right? That to me shows how full of crap she is, right? Because if you were actually listening to hip hop and you understood what hip hop culture is, the last thing you would do is get Orange Man Bad to have a mugshot. Okay, if you're listening to hip hop, you would know the implications of that. Why is the black community, black men, turning against the Democrat agenda right now? Because they served the most connective thing that they could have done in terms of really making sure that Donald Trump is seen not as this white supremacist pariah, but one of their own. Because that community, from somebody that directed hip hop videos for 10 years and really was involved in that community, I saw how that community was treated by the cops, by the feds. Okay, I see the parallels between, for example, COINTELPRO of the 60s, 70s, where the Black Panthers and the civil rights movement were destroyed, and the COINTELPRO operation of January 6th. They were the same operation, right? So when you see those parallels...
Let me stop you. I got to stop you right there. Because the other thing that we don't talk about enough, and since we're talking about Kamala Harris, is January 5th, is the fact that in supposedly the most secure place in the country, if not the world, the most surveilled place, pipe bombs were littered throughout D.C. And one just happened to be right by Kamala Harris in the detail. And then you look at the videos of these things, they're clearly edited so that you don't get to find out or have more clues as who the person was. And then on top of that, they don't act accordingly when they're found. And magically, these things look like the same type of devices used in the training for Homeland Security. And no one has asked Kamala Harris about this at all. It's been sparsely reported in the press. And again, the idea in DC that could happen without the help of some type of agency or law enforcement is absolutely ludicrous. You know, I was there. First of all, I was there in
Yeah.
December covering it, but they're in on January 4th, 5th, and 6th, covering it as well. And there is
Mhm.
no doubt that security I was in December, there were cops everywhere. I couldn't get
Yeah.
back to my hotel because there were so many streets that were cordoned off. All that was by the wayside on January 6th. You know, again, we come from the era of the war of terror and the color codes. And if you see something, say something.
Mhm.
At the Ellipse, there was such a lack of security. I couldn't believe it. They basically had a concert thing to get in where they didn't
Mhm.
let you have anything. But in turn, I mean, you couldn't even have a selfie stick in there, which is correct, right? They just let people put piles and piles of book bags up against the fence, up against unattended. Again, unattended bags could have, no one even thought about it. Literally thousands of bags. Thing was
Yeah.
a setup, top to bottom, start to finish. There was another thing people don't talk about. I'm one of the only people
Mhm.
that filmed it. Out of nowhere, a sledgehammer appeared up
Yeah.
on the second level. So that level where cops were fighting in the barrier, there was Scarf and Hat Man on the side, all that. They passed that sledgehammer up. Scarf and Hat Man, to his credit, grabbed it and handed it to the police officers. Now, I don't think that means that he was in on it or anything like that. I think at the end of the day, they tried to get way more violence and it did not succeed. Because if someone had been hit with a sledgehammer, game over. That's a wrap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then we got to take one more break. When we come back, I do want to get into Canadian Kamala. What a great show. Final segment of Making Sense of the Madness after this.
Did you know that thousands of authors across the country have written books and published them with Page Publishing? If you've written a book, Page Publishing can help you through the process. We cut through the confusion of the publishing world to make it easy for you. If we decide to publish your book, your work ends and ours begins. From copy editing and proofing to typesetting and book cover art, we get you printed, distributed, and sold on Amazon, Apple iTunes, and in bookstores across the country. We'll even help you promote your book. That's right, we do all this for you. Biography, self-help, mystery, novels, sci-fi, even a children's book. No matter what genre, Page Publishing can bring your book to life. Call today for your free author submission kit and find out how you can be the next published author at Page Publishing.
Call for your free author submission kit at 855-993-2114. That's 855-993-2114.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
And we are back with Vem Miller. The American Happens Network is where you can find him. The Blood Money Podcast is his own. Let's talk Canadian Kamala. Tell me about it.
Mm-hmm. You know, by the way, I just know it's America Happens Network. Sorry to correct that last minute. I should have corrected earlier. You know, I was just thinking, you know, what's funny to me. I was hanging out with James O'Keefe a couple of weeks ago. We're going hiking, and I started to joke to him about, like, you know, with this DEI situation, with really hiring unqualified individuals, they can even, with that mindset, they can even do an assassination properly. Like, really think about it. In the 1960s, back when they assassinated John F. Kennedy, you had a bunch of alpha males, bad dudes, but they were successful with that. And in this current era that we're seeing so many calamities because of this DI stuff. You brought January 6th, where there was videos that showed a pipe bomb being put next to Kamala's office. And you look at those kind of situations, they were able to cover those things up properly. And by the way, I'm not saying this to promote evil or whatever. I'm saying this to really illustrate how this DEI mentality, they can't even do their evil right because of these hires, And so, again, we saw that at the Trump, when Trump was almost assassinated, and God forbid that ever happens again. But that was, if you ask me, that dude was a DEI hire, and whoever was around him was a DEI hire. So anyway, just wanted to mention that because it seems as though they're hanging themselves with their own policies, if that makes sense. They're hanging themselves with their own, just these diluted, ridiculous concepts that do not seem to necessarily push what is the best and the brightest in our world in general, whether it's for good or for evil. But I apologize. What was your question?
No, we were talking Kamala and Canada.
Yes. Kamala and Canada, I mean, the big thing over there is that, Canada is clearly a country that is going towards tyranny. And I would bring in the United Kingdom as well, where they're arresting people. They're threatening to arrest Americans over their freedom of speech, right? That picture looks like a horrible picture. We're talking about Justin Trudeau becoming the president of this country. What happens if that happens? I'll tell you what happens. I don't think that day is actually coming. Even if they try to steal this election, I don't think Americans will allow that to happen because that's the end of this country. It's pretty much the end of the world, freedom in the world. And we're going down towards really a George Soros type reality where we're all going to be under surveillance. Really, we're looking at the worst of 1984, and we've seen multiple movies about that kind of reality, and V for Vendetta, for example, and that's pretty much the end. If that happens, frankly, I can't see myself continue to live in this country. I'll probably go off, stop doing this kind of work, because that's pretty much the end at that point. I just don't see us recovering from that sort of thing.
Where do you think you'll end up? I often think about this stuff. I'm not married. I don't have any kids, but I do take care of my nieces. I've promised to get them through high school, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
They're 13 and 15 right now. But at the same time, I've thought about that. Obviously, I've known Max Kaiser since the early Bitcoin days, back when I worked at InfoWars. He's currently out in Ecuador. I've known plenty of expats that have ended up in Russia in this line of work, Fiorella, Isabella, etc. I know people that live out in South America that still do this type of work. But if this succeeds, is there anywhere to hide? Because it really is a new world order. It's global.
Yeah, I don't know for me if it's so much about hiding. I mean, Jason, as we've been talking, this work started for me back in the early 2000s. So a lot of people, it was COVID that woke them up, 2020, 2021. And so they're 3-4 years into this fight, right? I'm literally 2.5 decades in at this point, almost 2.5 decades in, right? It really started on 9/11. 9/12 was really the eye-opening experience of my lifetime, and everything evolved from that point, right? So I'm looking at this going, if Donald Trump is president, I'm willing to stay and fight and really become kind of a pain in the ass against that administration, because I don't see necessarily Donald Trump. I see Donald Trump as doing the right thing and having potentially a lot of bad people around him. And I think there needs to be good people to counteract that this time around, after we saw what happened between 2016 and 2020. So I very much...
Let me stop you. It is
Sure.
essential for real
Yeah.
criticism of the administration. I don't like
Yes.
JD Vance. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, he's better than some. He's far from my
Mhm.
first pick. Obviously, Peter Thiel, that's another guy that was in his administration, just on Rogan. Really riveting conversation. Not that I trust Thiel at all, but you got Vance with that connection. I want to see Mike Lee in there that has the bill to get us out of the United Nations. I want to see the Rand Pauls in there, the Clay Higginses, etc. The people that have shown some sack in the last 4 to 8 years. Forget about any of these. I don't want to see Pompeo. I was pissed I saw him at the RNC. You got to be kidding me right now. So we need real criticism, not Orange Man bad, not white supremacist Nazi. What are you doing with these people in your administration? You want to fight the deep state? Guess what? You can't beat the deep state today if you can't reveal who the deep state was when Kennedy was shot. So you promised us the JFK documents then. You best do it day one this time. You just promised me the 9/11 documents. I got to tell you, if I actually believed him, I'd be out campaigning every day. Right now, I'm kind of cautiously sitting back, and if he can get in, that is something I will hold him to account on again and again and again with every opportunity of somebody, to talk to somebody that may have some sway. Roger Stone's one of those people. James O'Keefe is one of those people, etc. These are essential. If you are going to heal the wounds of the past, you actually have to show people where they are, especially if you don't want a revolution, you want a reformation of our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, our system of checks and balances. We got about a minute and a half left. What would you like to leave the audience with, and where can they find and support your work?
So real quickly, if Donald Trump wins, our plan is to stick around and to be pressure on the Trump administration, not so much Donald Trump himself, but the people around him, to make sure the right thing happens. Like I was saying, if he doesn't win, frankly, after 20-something years of doing this, it's like I just want to have some peace. I'm not even looking to escape. I'm looking to unplug myself from this insanity. But I don't think that's going to happen. I actually think Donald Trump is going to win. I think we are looking at revolutionary change within our government. I'm not talking about a revolution necessarily, but we are looking at revolutionary change, especially outlets like us pushing for the agenda and making sure that we get our constitutional rights back and this becomes a republic again. In terms of America Happens, please check us out at americahappens.com. We are also on Twitter at America Happens 1. We are also on Smart TV, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Roku. Please check us out. Every day we're producing at least 2 pieces of content. We have some amazing documentaries coming up, especially this Bundy piece that I think is groundbreaking. And one last thing I want to leave you with, this is the first time that while we're shooting a documentary, there may have been an assassination attempt on one of the truth tellers, which we covered. So groundbreaking documentary on the Bundys coming up.
We have run out of time. I love you guys, and we will see you on the flip side.